so glad to have you. Let's make sure to turn on our mics if you guys can. We're going to go ahead and get kicked off as everyone continues to roll in, because I want to leave enough time for Q&A because this panel is so inspiring. I've had so much fun meeting each and every one of them. They have an amazing story to tell. I think you guys are going to learn as much as I learned about ad fund, national fund, brand fund, whatever you want to call it. I'll start really quick with an introduction of myself. My name is Lindsay Simpson. I am the CMO of The Dog Wizard, which is a mobile franchise for dog training with 100 locations, 190 sold. And I was previously the CMO of Athletic Republic in sports performance training. I've been in franchising going on 6 years, and in marketing for over 20. I'm incredibly honored to be here, and I'm really excited for all of you and this incredible panel that we have today. We're going to talk about National Ad Fund, what it is, how it's structured. We've got a lot of different perspectives here. We're going to talk about our plans for how you build that, your strategy for the combination of lead gen to brand awareness. We're going to talk about how you get your franchisees on board, how you might deal with conflict, and how you might report and measure on your brand fund. So today's gonna be a really exciting session, and don't leave early because I'm gonna hit these panelists with some rapid fire questions. So you'll get some really good nuggets at the end of today's session. So without further ado, I'm gonna do a quick introduction and then go down the table, and they're gonna tell you a little bit more about who they are, where they came from, and what experience will help them with their perspective today. And right here we've got Shelly, the VP of Griswold Home Care. We've got Julie Green, who's our VP of Marketing for Massage Heights. We have Chris Boutron, from CEO of Mainline Brands. And down at the end, we have Dawn Perry, who's the Chief Brand Officer of CertaPro. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and get started. Shelly, will you give a background?
Yeah, absolutely. So Griswold Home Care, if you haven't heard of us, I always like to make clear that we were Griswold before National Lampoons. We launched in 1982, and so we're 43 years old. We are based outside of Philadelphia here. We have over 175 territories in 32 states now. And so my experience is actually not so much in franchising. Griswold was my first franchising role. I started 4 years ago. But prior to that, I held a lot of marketing roles. I worked at Comcast right here in the city for several years. I worked for CBS Radio as well. And then I got into the appliance world. So Electrolux and Frigidaire Major Appliances. I was the marketing director for the Northeast region. And how does that relate to franchising? I know it sounds like it might not, but it does, because I was working with the local retail channel. So I would help them with their marketing of our brand, with programs and platforms and creative and ideas and strategies to help these small, independent local retailers be able to market. And so I've always loved that local small business, helping them launch, getting them started. And so that's where I draw a lot of my experience for franchising with Griswold.
Is it my turn? I'm Julie Green. As Lindsay said, I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Massage Heights. We have 115 locations in North America. I've been in the franchise industry 17 years, which feels very strange to say, but I was the first hire outside of the leadership team from a brand in Virginia Beach no one had ever heard of called Mosquito Joe. And there were no franchises, there were 5 of us, and I got a total masterclass in franchising and being in an emerging brand and starting with no ad fund and having to create an ad fund out of nothing. I was there for about 8 years. I spent 4 on the agency side, still in the franchise space, and then never thought I would say this, but I missed franchisees. And so I've been with Heights for about 2 years now, so all of it franchising, all of it wonderful, and very excited to talk to you all about how to spend their money.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Butron. I'm the CEO and president of Mainline Brands. So Mainline Brands is essentially 3 brands. Mosquito Authority, one of the largest mosquito control companies in the United States. We now have Pest Authority, and we acquired a company. We partnered with a company called Fitness Machine Technicians that was actually headquartered here in Philadelphia. That's an exciting new brand that we have. Overall, with the 3 brands, we have over 350 franchisees. 550 plus territories across the United States, Canada, Puerto Rico. We continue to grow every year, and we're excited about it. My background is so long that we don't have enough time to really go into it. But just to name a few of the companies I've been associated with that I've been honored to be a part of, Senior Helpers, and I have some friends in the crowd that work with me there. That was a great ride for about 6 or 7 years. I also worked for big companies like Sunoco and Mobil over the years, all in franchising. I'm the old person on this panel, so it's been over 30 years of franchising, and I'm happy to be here today.
Mature, Chris.
Mature.
Yes, mature.
No heckling by my friends.
I'm also on the mature side of this as well. So I'm Dawn Perry. Thanks for putting this panel together. I'm excited to talk to all you guys today. I am the Chief Brand Officer of CertaPro Painters. I've been there about 2 years now. A little bit about my background. I should say CertaPro is about the same size, a little over 350 franchisees in the U.S. and Canada. And no Puerto Rico yet, but I'm ready to go open one there. That would be fine. I would like to go to Puerto Rico. And before that, I started my career in direct marketing a million years ago at People Magazine. We were just talking about this, they were talking about your favorite brand. Well, I got to meet Aretha Franklin in my first job, so that wasn't a bad first gig. Yeah, it wasn't a first, right? So, but I've been really honed by the brands that I've worked for and with. So starting out with People, Time, Sports Illustrated, going on to Scholastic and all the children's book clubs, and from Clifford the Big Red Dog to the Babysitters Club. So managed all those brands. Went to Avis Budget Car Rental, which is not franchising, is licensing, but similar, it's adjacent. And then I was a franchisee myself of the Little Gym. And so I've been a franchisee, I've been a struggling franchisee. I've been a brand marketer that thought I could do everything myself as a franchisee, and learned pretty quickly I couldn't. And then I was happy to go back into franchising at ERA Real Estate. And real estate is a very different model, but that's when I first got introduced to the BMF. They kept talking about the BMF. I'm like, what in God's name is the BMF? That's the Brand Marketing Fund, also the General Advertising Fund that we'll talk about in a little bit. And now I'm most recently back with CertaPro in one singular brand versus many at Anywhere brands. So thank you.
Thank you. We're excited to have you all. Thank you so much. Franchisor-led funds, or whatever you might call them, ad fund, marketing, I think I've heard every name under the sun, can have many different formats, whether it's a percentage based, like royalties, it might be a flat fee based, you might have some legacy owners that might be on a different structure. I've worked for brands that have had many different faces for this. In my previous brand, it was $100 a week, flat fee, didn't matter how big the franchisee was. Brand was 30 years old and they weren't going to change it anytime soon. So try growing a brand at $100 a week with no opportunity for growth in the future. I've also worked for my current brand. It's a 2% flat. However, we have franchisees who are 20 years in the system that have old FAs that we have been working over time, modifying and upgrading. And as we bring on new partners, having to change that ad fund strategy. So tell us really quick, maybe what you call yours and what is the format and structure.
Sure, absolutely. So we call it the GMF, or General Marketing Fund. And I was probably asked on this panel because we do have a small budget. I think they look like, where's the smallest ad fund? And they said, oh, we'll ask Shelley. We do, so we have this old, brand, but we have a 0.5% of royalties. And it's a $20,000 annual cap. So we have a lot of our largest owners hitting that after 3 months, right? We're working on changing that and chipping away at it. We have to be very creative, and we have to, get a lot of buy-in from the legacy owners. But we make miracles happen with that little budget, do we not, Julie?
You do. Yeah. You do great work. We call it the Brand Fund, or the National Brand Fund, and ours is a 3%. So pretty easy.
Yeah, so we call it the brand fund as well. We range from 1% to 3% depending on the brand. We actually had a conversation before you all joined us about how, because a lot of the folks in the room are in emerging brands, and how do you start a fund and where do you start? And we were commenting that most FDDs should be, established to have a fund, whether or not you collect it all or not. So many FDDs say 3%, but you might only be collecting 1%. And that's pretty common, so don't think that's not. That's very, very common. But 1% to 3% would be ours for all three brands.
Yeah, and I'm the same. We're called the General Advertising Fund. I said BMF before. That was an ERA. That was a brand marketing fund. It's the General Advertising Fund. It's also a percentage of sales. I was reminded back at ERA, we also had some legacy. We had flat, we had a sliding scale, we also had a change where as the franchisee grew, their actual brand marketing fund decreased. I don't recommend that one at all. That was before me, because you want to continue to grow your brand. You can cap things, certainly, for your bigger franchisees.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. The capping is, that's very common as well.
Yep.
That really helps your large franchisees that don't want to take the burden of the whole fund.
Exactly.
Chris, really quick, I just want to dig in. You had a really interesting perspective about how you might build it into the language of your documentations early, but might not take advantage of it later.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, you almost have to do that, and we were talking about earlier how do you raise it though after that? So you establish that 1% to 3%. You're very clear to all your franchisee that it's there. You're always clear, obviously, even if it's 3, you have to disclose that you're only collecting 1. But when it's time to go up, we're talking about how do you do that effectively, and it's really a communication, a two-way communication with your franchisees to get buy-in from them. I said it's usually a major program or a partnership that costs X amount of money that you can put to the fund. If it's something that's transparent, something that they know is helping them directly and not just go into awareness, it's the best way to get them to buy in and raise your fund to get up to that 2% to 3%.
So arguably the biggest theme of the conference this week has been having a ULE-minded culture. But I think maybe for all of us marketers, we also think that creating that brand fund up front will put you in such an incredible position for growth and scale in the future. So if you do anything besides ULE, it's create your brand fund early, or at least have the language in which you could take advantage of it later in your growth cycle. So you've got your brand fund. What do you do with it? How do you plan for it? The age-old question, do you just spend it on brand awareness? Do you do lead generation? And on a tight budget, because I'm coming to you first, how do you be creative and magical and create miracles with your brand fund?
Yes, that's what we do every day, Griswold. Since we do have such a small brand fund, it's pretty much impossible to say we're going to do a national brand awareness campaign. So what we do is we invest in programs and platforms that can help the franchisees do that for themselves in their local areas. So what I'm talking about maybe is your social media platform, a tool for reviews and reputation management, right? Those kinds of things that you can invest in. You can, for digital advertising, you create that partnership with a vendor. You have this agency that's your preferred partner that you've negotiated really good rates so that it's more affordable for your franchise owners. And so you put those out there, you spend a lot of time educating them on it, making it accessible for them. Something else we do is obviously have the websites, the local websites available for each of the franchisees. We have that, we manage that for them. But we do like to find really creative ways to help them amplify the brand in their local areas, and amplify the brand from a national level. So things like, I told them this example this morning, we're partnering with a small startup where the CEO is a graduating senior at Penn State. Don't know if we have any other Penn Staters out there, but I went to Penn State. I always try to look back to my, my college and see what we can do to partner. And these kids have really figured out they've cracked the code for YouTube. They get the algorithm, they know what to do to get your videos noticed, and they do it from start to finish for you. and pump out those videos super quickly that we can't do on our own. And so we try to find these, and also, they're so cheap. And I'm not going to be the one to tell them that. Now, maybe down the line, I'll say, look, you guys could be charging a heck of a lot more for what you're doing, but right now, this is perfect for me. So, so finding creative ways, looking for those unique partnerships and ways to just kind of really make a lot out of very little. That's what we do.
Dawn, I actually want to come to you.
Sure.
How do you make the plan? You've been through some major brands,
Yeah.
and you're given this chunk of money. How do you strategically allocate those funds?
No, I mean, it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And even though I've been at bigger brands, my brand fund at some of these other places have actually been quite small. And of course, you need to use your brand fund to keep the lights on, to pay for your staff as well, because many of the marketers wind up in the brand fund as well. You have to pay for your technology, whether it's your website or other things. So in the end of the day, sometimes there's not much left for anything else. But I think what I would say is think the winner of the game is going to be an integrated marketing strategy, right? So that is, if you are a small regional brand that you are just starting out in franchising and you work in 2 states, right? Well, a national brand awareness campaign is not valuable to you at all, right? But you could have a great opportunity to do things regionally and locally with targeted CTV, OTT, whichever you're going to call it now. There's ways to get into the mainstream media in a very targeted way based on who you're trying to acquire. So I think there's a variation there. I also would not, when we talk about awareness, don't lose sight of the fact that there's things that you do in your market, like feet on the street, that build your brand awareness. Whether it's anything from attending events to word of mouth referrals to reviews to everything that you do every time to interact with the community, having your shirts on, your signs in the yard, if that's appropriate for your business, those things are all part of your brand building.
Julie and Chris?
Yeah, I'll just say, from the standpoint of when you are building a plan around, you're just starting to franchise or you're an emerging brand, there's some really clever ways that you can target. Dawn was saying if you're in 2 states, doing this very widespread TV commercial is not going to be the best bet. And so, obviously digital marketing has some really great targeting capabilities. Streaming is also another thing where you can get very, very targeted with your ad and your ad spend. And I also, think through when you do grow and you're thinking about scaling this plan and building, what we do is I have all of our national brand awareness set up to complement what the franchisees are doing. And there's a lot of education that goes into that. So as an example, from a digital perspective, I don't run search ads on a national level. I'm running display that bolsters their search, so I'm not cannibalizing their own marketing spend. So, and there's great vendors here who can talk to you about some of that, but digitally, obviously I'm not giving you any mind-blowing news here, is probably the best way from targeting to make sure that dollar is going as far as it can. I don't know if you have anything to
Great.
add.
No, I guess to go back and maybe from my perspective, it starts a little earlier than that because everything they said is spot on. But what we do, and we've done this in every brand I've been with, is we've established a marketing advisory council with franchisees, and we have bylaws for that group. And what we do annually is we budget. Let's be honest, everybody in the room is saying, how much money do we have and what can we do with it? So the big thing you start with, and I always start with, was what are your objectives, to your point, everybody's point, but then how much money do we have? Because a lot of times there's not enough money, so you got to start there, and you really do. So then you say, how can we use our money to make the biggest impact to get the most buy-in from our franchisees? And so we do off-site planning meetings. We bring in our key vendors to present on certain topics, our partners. At the end of the day, we walk away with a plan that says, here's awareness, here's lead gen, and here's some of the tactics that might do both. So, but it's totally, you have to have the buy-in from your councils and your franchisees, and you have to have clear objectives, for sure.
For sure.
Dawn teed us up for the next question, which is the brand fund can also and sometimes be used for staffing, headcount, salary, and how do you make that decision on what you insource versus outsource? Where do we bring in experts and outside partners with vendors, suppliers, and then what do you hire internally? Where are you going to get the best bang for your buck, per se? Julie, I want to start with you on that one.
Sure. So when I started at Massage Heights, I think there were 3 of us supporting 115 locations. And we kind of looked at it as starting at, ground zero. How do we want to shape this team? What do we want the support to look like for our franchisees? And I made the decision from an internal staffing standpoint that I felt very strongly that there should be, just like you have a franchise business coach or a franchise business consultant, whatever your brand calls them, there should be a marketing counterpart to that. And so I hired 2 marketing managers, and you can think of them as field managers. They're just not actively out in the field. And they're divided up in territories, just like a franchise business coach is. And they have monthly, weekly, depends on the franchisee, calls, and it's optimizing budgets and talking through campaigns and offering suggestions and giving that little push when they need it. Because my viewpoint on this is I could have hired one digital person, right? And they could have been on my team and they could have been handling the website, for example. Or I could outsource to a digital vendor who has experience in this space, and now I have their whole team. And that's an extension of my team. So what I really encourage you to do, and I know a lot of this is dependent on that brand fund, like my whole team's salary does come out of the brand fund, is to think through the strengths that you have on your team already, or the strengths that you need and or can't outsource. So for me, it was that relationship with the franchisees. Like my marketing managers it's wonderful, the emails I get from franchisees that's like, this alone is worth the 3% that I pay for the brand fund, which I'm
I want to meet that person.
I've heard it twice in the past year, so I could leave the industry happy. And then think about things that are so nuanced, like PR. Public relations is another great example. I could hire one person, but for 115 locations, or, I have a PR team, a vendor, and all of these become extensions of our team. When I do meet the team day, those vendors are on the slide, like when I talk about the marketing team. And my expectations for them are as much, that they will respond to our franchisees just like we would, and they would support our franchisees just like we would. So that is my 2 cents on that, I think, is figuring out what you can and can't train, what is really important to you in your system. Mine was that relationship. And then what makes sense to bring in their whole team and kind of delegate that to them. And it's worked out really well for us.
Great.
I don't know if anyone else wants
Chris,
to.
you can have the opposite approach. Tell us about it.
Yeah.
He outsources everything.
And I wrote there's not a right answer, right? And, that's the first thing to say. It's what's right for you and your business and your industry you're in. But I tend to agree with some of the things, which is, I've had in-house digital and found out it's just something that I'd rather outsource. They do it for a living. They stay up on top of it. Google's changing so quickly, and I sure don't want that burden on our organization. So there's certain functions like that absolutely I will almost always outsource. So then the only other thing is if you can bring somebody in at a cost lower than you can outsource it, and somebody that actually needs to be ingrained into your business and your industry because it's so a niche organization or a niche industry, then that might make sense. But like PR, I outsource, but I can do it cheaper than hiring somebody, and I have some great success with the company that I'm using today. So yeah, I'm probably more of the outsource, but again, I think it's specific to your industry and your company.
Dawn, you have a nice hybrid, right?
Yeah, I have a bit of a hybrid. I do want to mention what Julie had said. We actually, at CertaPro, we had regional marketing managers for quite a few years, and then COVID happened, and then things changed. So just recently we actually call them marketing success managers. And the reason we do that is because they're no longer regionally focused. We're at a size where we have franchisees that are very large, and we have new franchisees that are just starting out. And we found that when we pair our marketing success manager with our general manager or operations manager, whatever you call them, they can talk in a different language when you're talking to people that are making $10 million versus those that are making $1 million or less in their business. So I love that strategy. We do it as well. But one thing I would say just about the digital strategy is, yes, when you're starting out, it is excellent to have your franchisees take the burden of some of that we'll call local marketing, right? Paid search, as an example. You can provide them vendors to do that. We did that. But as we've scaled, now we're trying to figure out how do we bring it back so that we're not running 350 individual campaigns and getting no benefit with Google, and we run it as one campaign. And then there's other things. It's great to have an agency, right? Because they'll bring you things like, oh, there's now this thing called Performance Max that, you know, it's Google's world. We all live in Google's world. But every day it's something new that they bring up. But that you can leverage when you are running bigger, larger scale campaigns. So it's a mix, I think, is
Yeah, and I
appropriate.
think we actually do the same. So we'll still leverage if we're doing a campaign and we're kicking off a new service or a product, then we still use the ad fund. We still aggregate our and use our leverage for PPC or whatever it may be. So we do a combination of both.
And what we've done now is charge them back, which is a whole other can of worms, if you will. But, you know, if they're used to paying for it, but we know we can leverage the size and the scale and do it ourselves, like how do we strike that balance where we fund some and they fund some, which we talked about earlier today, too.
A matching program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely, I run ours a lot, like Julie has stated. I fought very hard my first year to get any of the remaining salaries. There were some that were like half or 40% salary, to get them out of there, simply because it was such a small ad fund. So, you know, trying to keep salaries out of your ad fund if you can as you get started, I think is, you know, a really smart thing to do. But I'm going to actually one-up your saying that your franchisee said that the 3% was worth having your on-staff.
Good luck to you. You can try.
I'm going to one up because we just launched a program called the Local Marketing Program, where I have 35 franchisees
She's
that
going
just
to.
signed up to pay for 2 new staff people at our home office
There you go. That's
to
nice.
do some of that basic,
Yeah.
She won.
that basic local marketing stuff, like the hyperlocal social posts, reviews and reputation management. It's a very, very defined, lots of boundaries of what they'll do for you, but we have 35 franchisees now paying essentially for a salary of 2 staffers. We've hired one and the other one is being interviewed now. And so I see this as game changing for us because we're going to essentially be able to push out our programs through these franchisees for something that they are actually paying the salaries for. So that's optimizing a brand fund because we're not having to use any of our fund for
Yeah,
it.
it's brilliant. I mean, when I was at Anywhere Brands, which was ERA, my brand was ERA, but Coldwell Banker had an all in-house creative team. And then they would offer a concierge level regional marketing asset, right? So we had them on staff at corporate, but then you could buy their time, if you will, which was another revenue stream, which was great.
Speaking of revenue stream, one of my brands, we actually created an in-house agency. At the time, none of our franchisees were doing digital advertising, and to actually encourage them to work with an agency where there's typically a minimum management fee that they can't afford, or there's a minimum spend on platform that for oftentimes in very small DMAs, you can't even make the minimum spend. So just to encourage our organization to work in digital advertising space, we created an in-house agency. And I suggest that for the start, but as you might imagine, that scaled really quickly. And very soon after about 40 locations, we couldn't handle the bandwidth. And at that time, it was a perfect opportunity to bring in a third-party agency with the expertise and the scale, and then they helped us take it the rest of the way. So sticking with a certain plan is, as long as you're flexible and you're able to bend and pivot. I think of Friends, pivot, pivot.
It's a classic.
Then you're in a good position because what you decide to spend the marketing fund on doesn't always have to stay that way.
Correct.
Let's talk about how you measure the success. So you've made this plan, you've got this percentage. How do you measure the success and report back to your franchisees about that? Chris, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure, because it actually builds on what I said earlier. When you have the Marketing Advisory Council and you do the annual budgeting and you set those goals, and those goals come with real tactics, with real results. So when you establish that and track it, as long as it's transparent, then you have to communicate to the rest of the network. So we do it on a quarterly basis. We have a marketing update that says, here are the campaigns we're running within the ad fund. Here's what we did. Here are the results. It could be good or bad. Everybody has to remember, marketing is not a science, so there are going to be some wins and some losses. But I feel as long as you're transparent with everybody and you're consistently communicating with them, that's the key to it. So everybody has their own KPIs, but that's what I'd say. Set them early, measure them, and communicate them. Really, really important.
Dawn?
Yeah, I would say I agree on all fronts in that regard. I think it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish again, right? So brand awareness is really difficult
Really
to
tough to
measure,
measure.
right? Even if you're doing
Absolutely.
brand awareness studies and other things, you can maybe move the needle a little bit here and there. Certainly KPIs are important. We do something where we provide this souped up Excel document where at the top it shows what the brand is spending on their behalf. These are general advertising funded initiatives. We have co-ops which do the mass heavy lift of the mass media. They're in the middle, and then what they should be doing locally, and then we also time it out for them so they know on a calendar when they should be dropping direct mail, when that should be aligned with whatever the spring promotion is. And then we've now built a business plan to do that. So look, when you're looking at your measurement for marketing specific, like first of all, most of the time when you're in franchising, it is operations led. There's probably many of you in here that are on the operations side of the business. So you build a business plan for your franchisees, and marketing is one or two tabs at the end that maybe feeds into the rest of it. We just went through and revised the complete marketing plan because what was happening is, I would say as a franchisee, I want 2% growth next year in system-wide sales, in my sales. Great. Then, okay, well, then I need X number more leads. Well, it doesn't work that way because depending on where you are in the media, what you're buying, and the expense of that, which goes up year over year, including search, which used to be the most efficient thing, we've now built it into a more hierarchical, there's a hierarchy to the list. And we also look at other things besides return on ad spend and return, just overall sales that are generated. We look at our return on our booked business as well. So book dollar per lead, just so that we can have a different lens, because not all leads are worth the same amount, right? So some have a higher value.
If I can go back, I mean, I still building is, I think the key in any marketing fund or any marketing is listening to your franchisees and letting them know you're listening to them. So, you know, not only do they have to know they're being heard, that you're actually doing something about it. And so what we tend to do, I hate to say town halls, but of course we do, quote, town halls. I always have a marketing advisory council come on the call, talk about the ad fund, talk about the results. Our conference is next week. They have a whole space on the agenda to talk about it. Franchisees love to hear from other franchisees. They tend to listen to them more than they listen to us. So I try to leverage that relationship as much as I can.
Yep.
Julie?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same that they've all said. We obviously have KPIs, and our vendors have KPIs related to those individual spends. We also have a leaderboard at Massage Heights, and we do, it's called every month the leaderboard and sync up, or we just changed it like 2 months ago. I think that's what it's called. And that is the call where we are showing, I mean, it's top revenue, top prospects, top, you know, membership. We're a membership model, so, you know, top conversion. And then the part of that call is talking about what is going on the brand fund and what, you know, if it's website stats or if it's digital wins or if there's PR that we're excited about. Because I think, and Chris touched on this, to me, outside of those KPIs, the success is the buy-in. The success is not getting the contentious emails and calls of like, what am I even paying for right now? And I find that usually subsides with transparency and just being openly candid, because in truth, I feel like, you know, and I've seen this in other brands when I was in the agency, like they think it's a big secret, like what are you doing with our money?
That's
and it's
it.
like,
Right.
They do.
nothing, like we're spending it on marketing, but that's where that comes from. That's where that fear comes from. And you know, I find that it's usually franchisees who are struggling in their own local business, and it's always coming from somewhere else. But the more that you're open about it and the more that you talk about it, I find that gets you more buy-in, and that leads to me what I find to be the most successful thing.
And happy franchisees.
Happy franchisees.
What about you, Shelley?
Well, you know, since we're not doing advertising for our network of franchisees, we do measure the adoption of the programs and platforms that we're spending the ad fund on, or the marketing fund on, and then after the adoption, of course, the engagement with those platforms. So who's using it?
Yeah.
How are they how are they spending their time in there? But the interesting thing is, yes, we do push for more adoption and more engagement. But at the same time, because the fund is so small, we try to negotiate our partnerships with these different vendors more on a tiered system of if 0 to 30 locations are using it, it's per location, or it's a different price. so that we do this every 6 months, use it or lose it. Look, guys, you adopted and you opted into using Constant Contact, and we're paying for you, but you're not using it. So unless you start using it now, we're removing you from that. And that way we can allocate those funds to other programs that maybe can be used, or to other franchisees who are using them. And so that does often motivate more engagement, or it just sort of cuts out those that are just not going to do it anyway, and then you can use that money for those that are going to do the things you want them to do.
You bring up a really good point, because we call it working with the willing. You know, in many cases, you can launch all of these things and they raise their hand and they take them, but if they're not using them, it's wasting your money. So I think that's really smart.
I also love your perspective. Brand fund can be so hard to measure. We were talking about how you measure brand awareness and brand lift, but it's also a cost savings and efficiency savings. So if somehow you could find a calculation of time savings, if you knew the value of the time of your franchisee, and you could report back on how much you're saving them, also in the price that you've negotiated through your vendors, how much they might be saving if they would have gone direct to that vendor and not have like a platform discount, I think is a really fantastic way. And so I love that. I love all of your guys' suggestions.
Yeah.
But how do you get them on board? So you are trying to convince these franchisees, you need them to usher your ideas and be your cheerleaders. And so how do you gain buy-in along the way from beginning to middle to end? Dawn, I'd love you to start us off there.
Sure, and Chris alluded to it before. I mean, look, your franchisees are your partners. If they don't succeed, you don't succeed, right? So we have, like you, we have a brand marketing advisory board. We have a franchisee-led business board as well. And it's really important to bring them along the way. I told this story earlier with the panel that when I was at ERA, I was bamboozled into this project that was going to be, we're just going to update the brand guidelines, and it turned into a complete refresh of the logo, the brand guidelines, the signs, and everything. And we did it in 3 months. And the only way we could do it in 3 months was that we had our franchisees along for the ride. And it's just like what you want to do with your customers, right? You're trying to create raving fans, not just customers for life, but people that will advocate for you. You already know who your top influential, maybe not the highest performing, but the most influential franchisees you have. Well, they're going to be your biggest advocate to getting buy-in. And if you take them along the way, but you're clear in your guidelines of who has the final decision, you want to be clear up front that you are here to advise and provide insight, but the brand has the ultimate decision. Because if I had told you that if we said to the franchisees, we're changing all your signs out in 3 months, the answer would have been absolutely no, right? But that comes with, do you have enough money in your brand fund to help facilitate some of those changes? That also makes it go over a lot better as well. So it's that nice marriage of influence with your franchisees, but then ultimately having the final decision.
Just to build, because I know I've said a lot of the same thing, but as many times as you can, I would do a beta before you release something. Yep. So it's always much better to say, hey, we're not just launching this new platform or this new marketing campaign without any proof. So we always, in our bylaws of our marketing advisory council, they actually have to implement the marketing test programs we have so that we can prove them out, and that makes adoption way easier when you have facts behind it.
That's an excellent point. We do the same.
I love, you've got some really great stories. I love this. You've got a superhero campaign, and then this 20-step climber.
Yeah, so again, we have to be creative at my company, to get people involved and interested. So we've done several different things over the years. When I first came on board, it was our 40th anniversary, so we did a program called 40 Ways to Celebrate Turning 40, and there were 40 different tasks that not only involved marketing, but we got other departments involved, like operations and finance, and suddenly we were having people sending us information that we never would get access to before because they wanted to be a part of this and achieve the 40 Ways. Another one that we did was 20 Steps to Brand Evolution Success. So we just did a complete brand evolution, basically a rebrand, but we turned it into this mountain climbing and used a Matterhorn graphic. This year, once we have our brand set now, we want to amplify the brand, and we need them to do that because, again, not enough money to do it for them. So we did the Digital Revolution, and we have the Digital Alliance, which is 12 superheroes, basically 12 different digital topics, and we have these little, icons, badges for each one, things like the Silver Hair Surfer, which is about SEO, and we had Brandy, which is brand awareness, and she's like a little Valley girl, and then we have, oh my gosh, so many different ones, I can't believe I can't remember them, but we're on month 9 now, obviously. We have a tracker, and if you attend the webinar, and then you complete the 3 action items, every month there's 3 action items, then you get the badge sent to you. It's basically a sticker. You have your tracker card. And the way that, the reason it motivates people is because we make it fun, but at national conference, we always do some sort of an awards ceremony, and it's just so fun. Like this year, it's gonna have to be, I know I'm gonna have to wear some kind of a superhero costume. I'm okay with that. I will do that. I've done weird things, but we always make it really fun. Their check-in is VIP, so they get this special bag with special cool things in it, and so we can put some money towards that kind of stuff. A little, and it doesn't take a lot of money. You can be creative with your graphics and things. So yeah, we try to do a lot of this sort of healthy competition, gamification, who finished first, what do you get from it? And it just seems to really work.
Well, the internal campaign
Yeah.
to get buy-in and franchisee support.
Yeah.
I love that. What about you, Julie?
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing riveting that I'm just going to validate what they all said. Utilizing committees is really important. Your Franchise Advisory Council, and we have a marketing committee as well. Those are paramount to make sure that and also what Chris said, like it is very rare that I would ever recommend anything unless I have data to show them. And as your brand fund grows, I would just encourage you to think through, like, we also have a recruitment committee, and so we needed to form a national recruitment program, digital program, and so I'm using the markets of the recruitment committee as a thank you for their time, but that way I'm able to back into what I need from a recommendation standpoint. Like, what is the cost per therapist to hire? Like, I don't know right now, so I can't tell any franchisee what to spend on that. So testing and data is really, really important, and talking about that with your committees, and then talking through that process on your town halls or your, leaderboard sync-ups, whatever your communication with your franchisees are. Give them that whole process. Like, I think that's another misstep sometimes is franchisees think that you just made a decision and you did it and it happened in 2 weeks, and it's like, no. We started here, we talked to the FAC who loved it, we brought the marketing committee in, we tested this campaign, this was the budget, these were the results. Now, here's the case study on it, and call your marketing manager if you want to implement this. Because that just gives them so much more insight into what you're doing, what your team is doing, and it goes back to what we were talking about with buy-in. Because then they're like, oh, that took you 3 months. It's like, it did. And so I think that's really important to bring them into that process. So not that it is necessarily a buy-in or, well, I guess in the end it is utilizing that and then just being really transparent about the process.
Well, and it can be really contentious, right, between the franchisor and the franchisee.
Yeah.
And depending on how old you are as a brand, how do you navigate maybe the times when things can get really frustrating between that two, in that relationship? You talked about this a lot.
Definitely, yeah. At Griswold, we have many franchisees who have, 35 years in the business. They started way back when Dr. Gene Griswold founded the company, and and that's a badge of honor, but also they're stuck in their ways in many instances. So really, obviously starting with building those relationships before you get to the point of contention, if you can, so that you already have that, easy, pick up the phone, give them a call, hey, how are you? How's this going, that going, how your kids, whatever. They already have that trust, that trusted relationship with you. You mentioned transparency. That's so key. Transparency with what you're wanting to do and how you're going to do it, to get there, to be able to navigate any contentious issues. If you're honest, they're not going to catch you in a gotcha moment or anything like that. always getting those key stakeholders, those really influential, I mean, I'm not saying anything that people don't know, but just to stress the point of those loud franchisees that everybody seems to follow, making sure you have them in the fold with you, so that when you do have something come up that might be sticky, they're out there sort of supporting you if you can, leveraging your FAC, using your town halls, all of those things. For us, when we did our brand evolution, the biggest help was the work group we put together. So we put together a brand evolution work group, and as we, figured things out with the brand pillars, the meaning behind the brand, the colors, and all of those different key elements, they helped us decide that. And it was really probably us steering them, obviously, the way that we wanted it to go, but making them feel as though they were, having a say in that process. I'm probably not saying anything new that you guys don't know, but just I think all of those things are worth reiterating.
Shelley, did you say Dr. G?
Dr. Jean Griswold.
Oh, I like it. It sounds like a rapper. Dr.
Yes.
G.
She was a badass. She was in a wheelchair and in MS when she was, she had MS when she was 8 in 1982, and she was like founding this company. Crazy.
It's fantastic.
Another thing that I will add on to that, and I've seen, and I will encourage a lot of you if you're looking into franchising or you've just started franchising, is to just be very clear and careful what you put in your franchise agreement about your brand fund, and what do audits look like, and what communication are you committing to, because that's a legally binding document. And I mean, a contentious email and phone call is one thing. A contentious, someone's brought in like a lawyer to the conversation, and I've seen that happen with brands before around the brand fund, because, and I will say, I've been doing this a really long time. There's a lot of stuff that leads up to getting someone to that point. So this isn't an overnight decision anyone makes. But I think that your franchise agreement and your disclosure and everything that you have in there about the brand fund is hugely important, and that is not something that you skip when it's time to refile. I think it's also really, we get into that. It's okay, what are we updating? What do we have to update? And there's a lot that goes into it. But making sure that that's a piece that you are revisiting. And if you said that there is going to be a report on an audit, give the damn report, because that's where it gets really contentious, is stuff like that. So transparency, culture, all of that is huge. But I mean, as with anything else, so is your franchise agreement.
Yeah. A lot to add there. I mean, I think it's, again, if you have all the fundamentals in place that we've all talked about already, and transparency is the big one. Picking your advisory council, if you have one, I know it seems very fundamental, but one thing that I'd say is, you want somebody with a marketing mind, because not all franchisees that are on the committee have a marketing mind, but then 2, you want to have somebody that's influential with other franchisees, so you have to balance it. Number 3, I always do it by geography, because every franchisee loves to say that the Northwest is different than the South and other areas. So that's part of our bylaws, is we always make sure we have representation from across the different geographies. But yeah, I haven't had very many in my career where I've had a lot of people have problems with it. And when I do, I always go back to your peers voted on that. This was a decision made by your peers.
Yeah. The only thing I would say, that you actually bring up a good point. We have, in California, we have to have employee painters. Everywhere else, they're subcontractors, so we always, something different there. The Canadian rules for marketing are very different, so we also always have somebody included there. I think I would just add, if you're in this conversation, you're emerging, right? Things are growing and feeling good. There will be a time when things are not going to be good for people, and having been a struggling franchisee once, I think the key is the transparency, the bringing them along, making sure you have the right people in the room for the conversation, but really just leading with empathy. There are times where you'll have a franchisee who's struggling, can't figure out if they can pay their staff, don't know where they're going to get the next amount. They're not going to pay themselves for 6 months, which is never a good idea. There should always be coached through that. So those are things, like you just come in with a bit of empathy and building those relationships that we've talked about, that'll get you a long way.
Yeah, I think that leading with empathy is important, because we tend to be like, oh, this franchisee, this or that.
Yes.
And it's like, wait, put yourself in their shoes. They invested their life savings. Like,
That's exactly right.
I tell the
yeah.
marketing managers that all the time. I'm like, if you ever get a conversation where they are angry or frustrated, I was like, the same thing, like their kid's college fund could be on the line, their 401k could be on the line. It's not you.
Yeah.
It feels like you, but it's not.
Yeah, and many times they leverage their 401k to buy into the franchise. So it is all wrapped up in one.
I think understanding our responsibility as a franchisor, our deep responsibility.
Absolutely.
I love that. All right, guys, I'm going to leave you with some rapid fire question. It'll wake everyone up, and I'm just going to go as quickly as possible, like podcast style, and leave you with 4 burning questions, and you'll want to go grab these books and go to these events and go follow these people right after you get out of this event, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So if you have any questions, think about them now, and I'll rapid fire question right now. What's hot? What's your favorite franchise brand right now? Who do you follow? Dawn.
Start with me. So I'm a Jersey girl, Jersey Mike's. I think their app is phenomenal. I grew up on those type of sandwiches in Jersey, and I went to Point Pleasant where they were founded. I think I probably went to the original Jersey Mike's. They're my favorite. I had a sandwich last night.
Chris.
Yeah. Selfishly, I love the Orange Theory concept and what they're doing across the country. And it feeds right into one of our brand's fitness machine technicians. So Orange Theory.
Yeah, Julie.
Wellness industry, very, very into European Wax Center recently. I am a customer, but also their marketing over the past 6 to 12 months has been awesome. Personally, Crumble cookies, because I love
There
cookies.
you go.
Shelley.
Not a specific brand, but the whole IV therapy thing is incredible. It has saved me so many times. We were talking about this last night. Definitely up and coming,
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so who's making waves? If we went on LinkedIn right now, who should we follow that will inspire us, starting with you, Shelley?
Okay. I have to talk about our brand. We have a franchisee in the greater Twin Cities that they are just incredible with their community engagement. They do things like their dogs, they got them certified as therapy dogs and take them into the local hospital for therapy. They paired up first graders with a senior center and do a pen pal program. They just are incredible in making those kinds of connections. She used to be a former hair salon owner, so she's a hairdresser. She's got that connection thing. So they're really fun to follow.
Griswold, Twin Cities.
Twin Cities.
And what's her name?
Yeah, Nicole Myrie.
All right,
Yeah.
love it. All right, Julie.
Okay, she's not in here, so I am not saying this for any other reason other than I truly believe it, but our CEO, Shane Evans, she founded the brand 20 years ago, and she stepped back in as CEO in February, and I've just never had more fun personally and professionally. Her vision is unmatched. Also, just championing women in the industry all the time. And she's just amazing. And I don't think she's in here, and my performance review is not next week. And that is a true statement. She's
Shane
wonderful.
Pater.
Yeah, Shane
What about you,
Evans.
Chris?
Yeah, I guess I won't list anybody in particular, but for the obvious reasons, anything in the AI world is moving so quickly, and I feel we really have to be on top of it and follow that industry and how quick it's going to evolve, because it's really going to change marketing and a lot of things. So that'd be number one. Number two, just selfishly again, I find interesting where electric bikes are going to go in the United States. If they follow European trends, I think that industry is going to really pop here and again help some of our brands, to be honest.
Dawn.
I would say I had the privilege of working with this woman. Her name's Sue Yannicone. It's quite a handful, that last name, but 2 N's and 1 C. Anyway, she and I worked on a program called What Moves Her. She is the president and CEO of Anywhere Real Estate Brands, franchise brands, and she still runs podcasts, and the whole purpose of that initiative was to provide opportunities for women to continue to succeed in real estate, but she does it now, expands past that, so I follow her.
All right, what's the must read or must listen for those of us who are podcasters? I'll start with you, Dawn. Head back down. What's the must read?
So I'm just finished creating. I wrote it down just so I make sure I get the night. Creating Superfans by Brittany Hodick. She's actually going to be our keynote speaker at our upcoming conference. If you haven't seen her book or read it, she has more than one book. It's really exceptional. Really, and I mentioned it earlier before about it's more than just customers. It's more about repeat business. It is about creating advocates and people that rave about what you do and what you're about. So I would recommend that.
Yeah, and I cheated. I saw you pick that one because I would have picked that one as well. So I went back old school since I'm old, and I said raving fans. I think that's an easy one because I think in any marketing, I think we have to start with retention and customer service and NPS. And I think we're mistaken if we think new acquisitions, where it's at, we've got to retain our customers that we have. From another perspective, I kind of laughed about this one. I love digital marketing for dummies for all of our franchisees. So if I could get every franchisee to read that book, I'd be much further along in marketing.
Julie, you don't read. Should we skip over you?
Yeah, no, I was joking with them earlier. So I work a lot, and so when I don't listen to business podcasts and I don't read business books, but I do read a lot. I think I'm on book 78 for the year. So I will give you a personal recommendation that the one that I finished recently, I see Dawn looking at me like, are you joking right now? Like, yeah, I just don't watch TV, so I read all the time. The Wedding People is the one that I read the most recently. So there's a personal recommendation for you if you are a reader. Don't ask me if I've watched any current TV show.
When we Zoomed with Julie, her entire backdrop, and it's not fake, is her bookshelf of all the books she's read. What was last year's
Color-coded,
number?
though.
They're color coded.
How many
It's
last
amazing.
year?
123. I read really fast.
So no
I
Kindle.
read really
You
fast.
got actual books going for everything? You're not on a Kindle?
I do both. I
Okay,
usually
just
am
wondering.
reading, it's a whole thing. If you are a reader, come talk to me afterwards.
Shelley,
I love
what book
it.
for you?
It's not really books. I would say, I'm going to be very basic, that basic, woman that just, says, listen to Brené Brown, read her books, listen
Yeah.
to Glennon Doyle's podcast. And the reason I say that, it's more the genre. Any way that you can learn more about connecting with people, being empathetic, being vulnerable in front of, in business, the more success I have in business. So I'm just going to keep doing that.
Okay, I love it.
Can I
Awesome.
add one thing? I'm sorry,
Yes.
and I don't want to blow anything up, but the other book that was really meaningful to me, it has nothing to do with marketing, is The 4 Disciplines of Execution. If you haven't read it, when we talked about change before and bringing people along, it is better if you have a singular focus on what you're trying to do, and then get everybody on board behind that too. If you try to do too much at one time, 4 Disciplines of Execution helps you execute.
Okay, so today's the last day of Springboard. Where are we going to next? I'm going to kick us off really quick. I attend regularly the Digiday conferences, which is actually outside of franchising to help keep my mind fresh in digital marketing and what's happening outside of what is our little bubble. So that's my next event in Palm Springs. What about you?
I'm definitely going to go to Unconference this year. I'm a huge skier. How I've never been yet is, I don't know why. So I'm going to go.
All right.
I leave Sunday for our Massage Heights conference in Tucson, so I'm very excited about that. And then I just registered for IFA, so hopefully I'll see a lot of you there.
Yeah, mine's like you. Next month is our annual conference in Puerto Rico, and it's the first time we're going to do all 3 brands together at the same time with some outstanding guest speakers and a focus throughout the conference on successful women. Believe it or not, I'm on this panel here. So I'm excited about our conference in Puerto Rico, and then I'm like Shelley, I'm really intrigued by the Unconference, so that would be one that I'm planning on attending.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's in my backyard, Park City, Utah, if you're coming.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and my conference is coming up in January for CertaPro, and we're in Carlsbad, so that's the next one, then IFA after that.
Love
But
it.
yeah, haven't been able to get out much. There's A&A keeps inviting me to one in Cannes, which I would like to do, but haven't had the time for that one.
Well, thank you all so much. I'd love to open it really quick with the last 3-5 minutes. Are there any outstanding questions that we didn't answer today about National Ad Brand Fund? Yes.
Yes.
Couldn't hear.
He asked if you do ad spend matching programs. Did I get that right? We don't do that. I don't know if anyone else up here wants to tackle that. We just testing is we will put the money in for testing campaigns, and are just kind of rotating markets that we do the testing in, whether it's a committee or whatever it is. But we don't match. I don't know.
I have a lot of experience with co-op programs from the appliance industry and the local independent retailers. And I think that's the only way at my brand that we're going to be able to get any, level of spend. So we're looking into doing that next year, where, if you put in this much, we'll put in this much to help you in your local market. What that's going to look like, come back next year. I'll tell you all about it.
We do the same thing. So we have a co-op where they have a co-op agreement of what they contribute, and then it is not dictated what we do, but we do in match at a certain level. And it's, my CEO likes to say it, so it's not one hand clapping. You actually have a good amount of money in a regional DMA to do some marketing. We also provide incentives, like we'll give a GAF incentive to do something we would like them to do, whether it's to drop direct mail or more direct mail in a prior year or some other, test another initiative.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, the only thing I've seen to be successful is the regional piece, the regional co-op, but then when you contribute to it, we don't take that out of the ad fund, though. We take that out of corporate funds if we match funds on a regional level. Because we don't think it's fair to burden the whole ad fund if it's only benefits that region.
Yep.
Did I see another question? Yeah?
When you guys launch a new market, do you guys generally try to focus on more of a grassroots, feet on the ground approach, or do you go digital focus primarily?
So we have a grand opening spend that's in the franchise agreement that our team executes for them, and it is both. A lot of it is digital. We'll do coming soon, to get word if it's not a saturated market. And then there is some hyper local research that goes into like, hey, here's some yoga studios to partner with, like the restaurant next door, you should have a grand open house or whatever. Because, this is something that we preach into the franchisees any chance we get, whether it's grand opening or their 10-year anniversary, is like, you have to be doing all of that. Like, there's not one silver bullet to any of this, so it can't just be digital. And people still like doing business with small business and business that's involved in the community. So for us, that grand opening spend is a lot of both. It's a lot of grassroots and then digital to bolster that.
I love that question. I think
It is a great question.
It's a
Yeah,
great
it's a good
question.
question.
And so I would say it depends on the industry you're in. So if you're in a high awareness industry with high competition and you're going into a market and everybody's on TV or radio selling windows, you're getting into selling windows, then you're going to have to spend money on advertising. But if you're in an industry with low awareness, then it's grassroots. All of our most successful franchisees that have really kicked off well are people that are in the community, that are building these relationships, and that's how you have to really kick it off the right way. I can't tell you how important that is, and that's what I'd recommend.
We'll also shift our budget between brand awareness versus lead gen, depending on how saturated we already are in the market. If I've never been into the DMA, I have to put more dollars into brand awareness to help build just an infrastructure of the brand. But if I'm going into a market where I already have 5 other franchisees and we're really dense, I'm actually going to shift my budget into lead generation because our other franchisees have done the majority of the legwork already. Any other questions? Yeah?
Do you guys use your ad fund for the conference, or is that a separate budget line item?
Ours is separate.
We have an
That's
allocation.
a great question, though, because
Yeah.
I've worked at brands where it is part of the brand fund.
Yes. Yeah.
Selfishly asking over there. So,
Asking for a friend.
yeah, we've done both, to be honest. Because I've joined companies or organizations where they do that, so it's usually a percentage of it that comes out of the ad fund. So I'd say yes, but it's only a small percentage typically.
Thank God ours is separate.
Well, and I've done both, right? So when it was completely included, we also got all the revenue for registration and everything. Any kind of sponsorships you sold, that all came back into the ad fund. And then now it's an allocation.
And if it's coming out of the ad fund, and the way we position it as, it's really real dollars that we're just saving you. If we didn't take it out of the ad fund, we'd increase your registration fees. So either way, you're going to probably pay for it. So.
Well, thank you guys so much. If I could give you all a Shelley Superhero Award, I would. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you to our panel.